The Brontes, perhaps like Dickens, are one of those sets of iconic authors in the Victorian period. Many of us are fascinated with them, of course me among them, and some of the reasons for that are the Brontes are part of the world of the North, Yorkshire, the world where industrialism rose, and not part of the world of London, as Dickens was. They also lived something of a sequestered life, or so people say, and that makes them very fascinating figures. What does it mean to write under a pseudonym? What does it mean to be a woman writing in the 19th century? What does it mean to be part of the great industrial North, and what kinds of novels did they produce? Jane Eyre is one of those novels that every young girl reads. Almost every time I teach it, someone in the class says, "My mother gave me that novel. It's my favorite novel." Perhaps for that reason, people tend to think, a woman's novel. But I read Jane Eyre and also Wuthering Heights, Villette, even Tenant of Wildfell Hall by the third Bronte sister Anne, as novels about liberation and enclosure. I think they're really about a central question for the 19th century, which is, what is the nature of the self? And how does that self interact with the broader world? Those of you who've taken my classes before know that I'm very interested in context. For me, that mostly means history, but I mean history in a particular way. I'm interested in the grander questions, such as the nature of North and South, but also minutiae, such as we'll be looking at some of the sketchbooks that Charlotte and Emily wrote when they were in Belgium going to school, because in fact they did travel the world a bit. Teaching the Brontes is a rare treat because it's an opportunity to both look at the sense that, the weird sisters, as they're sometimes called, to look at that myth, and also to destroy the myth, because I'm going to argue that they were something other than the weird sisters of the Moors. And I love doing that. I love bringing surprising information into the classroom. And I also love really looking at the texts themselves. So we'll be reading at least 3 novels, possibly 4 in 5 weeks, which may sound like a lot, but it's going to give us plenty of time to actually get down into the language of the text, including that final famous statement in Jane Eyre, "Reader, I married him." So marriage and other questions of novelistic import will be central to our studies this summer. As you may know, there were originally 5 girls and 1 boy in the Bronte family, and the 2 elder girls died when they were young, and that left Charlotte, Emily, and Anne and their brother Branwell. And interestingly, all of them were artists of one sort or another. Even Branwell, who famously was somewhat dissipated, probably an alcoholic or drug addict or both. But the 3 girls all wrote, and even though Anne Bronte is often seen as the lesser, I think that's probably not completely accurate. But it's interesting that they're all 3 artists, but I think also their works are all linked. And they're about some of the same things. And as I said, enclosure and liberation are one of those things. In a sense, you can read all 3 of the novels we're going to read as a continuum about the nature of personal liberty, human liberty, and the nature of the subject in the sense that John Mill speaks about it. I always think among the most pleasurable things to do is to get into a big armchair and read. And of course, in the end, that's why I became a college professor, even though I end up standing in front of a classroom talking about books. But in a hot summer's day here in Tucson, one of my favorite things to do is to read books like the Brontes and then get together and talk about them. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll be able to read, and then we'll meet together and have wonderful discussions about the novels themselves. So I hope you'll join me. I look forward to seeing old students and new. See you then.